Brokers Alliance and the National Insurance Clearinghouse present the Business Insurance Zone, a Bravo video event. Broadcasting in HD 1080p on Vimeo, YouTube, the Insurance Newsnet, Agent Navigator, brokersalliance.com, and on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and the Insurance Forum. And now your host, the whiz of the biz, Steve Savant. Well, welcome everyone to the Business Insurance Zone, the talk show that spotlights insurance in your practice, keeps you up to speed on insurance news and products, features insurance strategies from top advisors. Get in the zone, the Business Insurance Zone. Our email address is thebiz@brokersalliance.com, or you can call us at 1-800-722-6147. Actually, I think I just blew that. 1-800-290-7226, extension 147. For all our quotes or any questions you have on life insurance, disability, long-term care, annuities, and group pension plans. And remember, I'm not a tax or legal advisor, so before moving forward with anything in our show, any strategy you may hear about, just check in with your CPA and your attorney. And if you're with a broker-dealer, always check in with your compliance officer to make sure everything we're saying is true. And of course, it is, but just in case we have a faux pas or a misstatement, we want you to always check in with those substantial authorities. And of course, with me today, talk about authorities. We're talking about group pension again. I've had Susan, I've had you on my show before. Susan Hajek, head of our pension division. How you doing?
Nice to see you, Steve.
Well, it's always nice to see you, Susan. You bring a bright sunny day to my normally. I have to talk about insurance. Think about that. I mean, you're bringing a brightness into our show.
That's true.
And we thank you for it. And I have to say, if you've missed any of Susan's previous videos, you can hop out to our site on our on-demand section at www.brokersalliance.com or Vimeo, YouTube, the Insurance Newsnet, the Agent Navigator, all those out there. And of course, we also play with all our social medias out there as well. Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, the Insurance Forum where we blog. I mean, we're everywhere. I want to talk about today, though, specifically about investment options, because I think there was an episode or two ago where you talked about proprietary funds and proprietary platforms, and I'm kind of like, well, wait a minute now. Don't I have choices? What if those funds aren't that good? What if they didn't perform, right?
That's correct.
So I want to talk a little bit about, we're talking about group cases, and I noticed this is really hot for our producers. Some, not all states, but some states allow non-registered agents to sell group annuities that would normally be variable.
That is correct.
Or at least they look like variable. Is that correct? Correct?
There are some states in which when you obtain your life license, there's some type of a variable component or a variable grandfathering that actually occurs. So then you can sell actually group variable annuity products.
Without having a
securities license, a 6 or a 7.
Okay.
Other states, though, have passed laws in which, in order to sell a group variable annuity product, which, from a platform perspective,
do we know those states?
We do have a chart with those states.
Oh,
however,
perfect.
we always want to check with the state insurance agency, the state board, to make sure that the information we have is correct, because it does constantly change.
All right, so don't depend on us, although we'll give you our latest.
Sure.
But we'll give it to you, but it'll come with that caveat.
Absolutely.
Okay. And I'm cool with it. Now, I'm talking about investment options. I'm thinking, mutual funds, or especially in variable contracts, are not really mutual funds now. Right? We're talking about variable accounts, separate accounts.
That's how it's registered.
Is that the only thing we can put in these group cases? Just those kind of annuities or variable annuities or mutual funds? Are those the only two real?
Well, the reality is some carriers offer what's known as the ability to have investments outside of that group variable annuity product, and then they're tracked for an additional fee to culminate that up for the participant in order to track at the plan level. So let's say
So your statement it'll reflect everything, even though it's outside their normal platform.
Exactly.
But
there'd be additional cost.
Oh yes, the additional cost. Now, is it punitive or is it pretty much
No, it isn't punitive at all. And every carrier has different procedures and different costs associated with that, depending upon the carrier that you choose.
But are most group pensions, group retirement plans, are they predominantly these variable contracts and these mutual funds? I mean, is it pretty much that runs the roost here?
Pretty much, yes.
Well, when you think about investment options, and I know we deal with a lot of platforms, I know one of our biggest ones is Mutual of Omaha.
Correct.
I want to know about, and their investment, like let's just use them as an example because we need to talk, and I think it's sometimes talk about a live platform and their options. How much diversity is on that platform when I'm coming as an investor and I want to look at a huge potpourri of product line? Do they got that kind of depth?
They do, actually. And what's nice about the Mutual of Omaha platform is they've actually done their due diligence by offering plan level, product level, as well as individual level overseance of the selection of the funds that actually occur in their main lineup. They have an organization, a company called Callan that works with Mutual of Omaha. They got another organization called Mesero, which actually offers fiduciary protection, and then they actually work with Mutual of Omaha to come up with the lineup, which is gone through, it goes through a lot of due diligence, a lot of practices that would select which funds are the best in their particular classes based on the investment policy statement that Mutual of Omaha has for their fund lineup per se. And I know we talked about that a little bit before.
Well, you just used a word about 10 seconds back, fiduciary protection.
Correct.
Now, is that protecting Mutual of Omaha on their platform, or no, it's really talking about they're extending that to the investor?
They're extending that to the plan and the fiduciary of the plan. The employer who sets up the plan, the trustee, will always be a fiduciary to the plan. So they have to use the prudent man rule when they're actually selecting the investment platform that they're going to offer to the participants.
There is such a rule.
Sure.
Talk about that for a second.
Well, the prudent man rule says, would a prudent man make these kind of decisions?
You know what? I think they should change the name of that rule
To
the prudent man and or woman
rule.
Do you not agree?
I totally agree. Absolutely, I agree.
Of course, we've had Dr. Barb Provost on our show before. She would totally want us to rewrite that entire title.
That's what I understand.
I think, are women more prudent than men? I think there's a case that she would make that they are.
I believe she probably would.
Ooh, she's just getting free commercial time. Enough of that.
However, today we'll stick with the
prudent man rule. All right. And would a prudent man do this?
Correct.
It still sounds undefined to be a little generic.
Well, what it's doing is you're using your due diligence.
Right.
You're using reasonableness to make those selections, i.e. if someone presented to me, let's say an investment advisor came to me and I was the plan sponsor and said, Susan, I have this platform from Mutual of Omaha. It's going to cost you 1% and the average investment performance is 10%. And I'm going to not charge your client you for record keeping. And then they came to me with another one that says, okay, this plan's going to cost you 3%, and the average return was 6%, and it's going to cost each participant $100 to have those accounts. A prudent man would look at that and say, okay, I probably need to look at this one more than the other one. Again, it's basically using common sense. I know what you're going to say about common sense. However, that's what the prudent man is basically saying. Would a prudent man make this decision or not make this decision going one way or the other?
Well, I like it because it's too many times we don't have any definitions. And basic street sense, common sense, prudent, basic, prudent. What would a prudent man do? Correct. So a prudent man would not load up into one fund 100% of his money with a beta risk that's going to be like 1.5 to 2 points most of the time.
Right, you go into a lot of things there. And going back to the whole idea of the fiduciary responsibility is what will happen is from a fiduciary perspective, you're looking at it as, hey, is this a good lineup? And what do I know that's been done to make sure that I've got a good lineup? Again, Mutual of Omaha, the example we're using, utilizes Callan and Mesero, who are two companies that are out there that provide due diligence services, interview services for fund managers, and they analyze the managers from an investment perspective, policy perspective, performance perspective, to make sure you've got the best of the best. Other platforms do that as well. However, they might be doing that in-house as opposed to hiring outside known entities to do that.
Does that fall under a section of the code that everything we're talking about? Is that a specific thing, or is that just general?
Well, the definition of fiduciary is definitely in the code because it actually follows forth, and you can't actually assign fiduciary. You can't get rid of fiduciary responsibility once you're a named fiduciary of the plan. But what you can do is you can take all the precautions, and someone can become a co-fiduciary, or actually say, you know what, I will honor the fiduciary responsibility because I provided plan level responsibility to this. IE. And that gets into the section 321, section 338. There's all kinds of different codes, which we don't want to get into in this show.
No. Although I do want to know about one section of the code, if you don't mind me asking.
Sure.
You know, I've heard of all these, and I've had you on before, and yes, you do quote a lot of. I have to say,
I try not to.
I know you try not to, Susan, but let's just be honest here. And we're not even, you know, and actually, ladies and gentlemen, I have to say, Susan is fairly normal compared to some of the actuaries that are involved. Now, I'm not trying to cast any negative aspersions on actuaries,
not at all.
but generally they're a little more pencil pushing, number crunching kind of analysis. But when I want to know one part of the code here that I see you. This is in your handwriting, so you must be talking about it. 408B, subset 2. I love that, just to say subset. I think that's great. She said in one of our shows, you missed it. If you missed this, go back out to our site and hit brokersalliance.com. When you got on our home site, hit on-demand video and listen to Susan pontificate on things like IRC, the Internal Revenue Code. I mean, just why say the acronym when you can just say it all out?
That's true. Good point.
It sounded so Lauren Bacall when she said Internal Revenue Code, IRC. I don't know. I just kind of got into it myself. But 408B, subset 2.
Fee disclosure.
So they got to, but we have to tell everything.
Yes.
Line item.
You're going to have to line item it. Yes,
okay.
Correct.
And we have ways of comparing those fees, right? I mean, we have ways to judge it, assess it.
We do. Typically, what will happen is there are certain fees that are associated with the plan, a variety of different fees, depending upon who the provider is for that particular information. And to divide that out and actually do an apples-to-apples comparison is something that's going to be a lot easier to do with 408B2.
Well, when we come back from the second segment, I still want to drill down on that issue. I just like saying 408B, subset 2. I just love it. Remember, you can contact me on the biz at brokersalliance.com or our 800 number at 1-800-290 extension 147 or our website, www.brokersalliance.com. You're listening to the Business Insurance Zone. Hey, the only show that talks about insurance in your practice. When we come back, we're going to be talking about 408B. Steve Savant here. For years, I've heard that less than 2% of all term life insurance ends in a claim. That's not many, and clients had to die to receive the benefits. That's the old term insurance. Now start selling term insurance. The term insurance that covers your client through a chronic illness, a catastrophic event, or a terminal diagnosis, and pays their monthly premium during extended periods of unemployment. What term life insurance can do all that? Western Reserve Alliance Advantage Term with living benefits. No other term insurance product bundles so many solutions to life's unexpected problems. And all in one policy. So for more information, call Brokers Alliance 1-800-290-7226. Stop selling the old term. Start selling the new. Well, welcome back to the Business Insurance Zone. I'm your talk show host, Steve Savant, financial commentator, and stumbling over I thought I was the interviewer extraordinaire. I can't even get out of my own segment. We're doing our second segment, all on the issue of marketing to these things with Susan, head of our entire division. You can write her, Susan.Hajek@brokersalliance.com, and our toll-free number, just her extension is 149.
149. You're 147.
947. Yeah, that's the 147. She's 149. But we're at the same number, 1-800-290-7226. When we broke, we were talking a little bit about 408B, subset 2, on disclosure of fees, which you said earlier in another segment. I think you told me that we're not even going to be actually enforcing any of this, right? Until 1/1/12.
Correct.
Okay, but even though we're not enforcing it, we're still looking at this and finding out what contracts or what platforms maybe there's a better way to do this. Maybe there's a way to save serious money. Maybe there's a better way, and we're going to look at all that. We do care on all this, due diligence on this, and I want to talk about it because it's part of marketing. I mean, usually in marketing, we just say, well, we have this group idea, you'll get a deduction. That's about as far as most of my producers are going to be. Me too. I'm writing the same thing. I know about the deduction. I'm happy to do that. But after I get past that, I don't know all the marketing issues. Now, we're talking about one of them right now, fees. If I can save serious fees, right? That's something to look at, replacement. Because nobody wants to pay any more than they have to.
That's a factor.
That's a factor.
Definitely a factor.
Give me another marketing factor. Oh, I felt like I was on Bill O'Reilly for a second. The no spin zone. We're on the factor. Hey, that little shameless plug, Bill.
I like that. That's good.
Talk to me a little bit about marketing. What's another factor? We're looking at fees. We're looking at investment return, right? What's another thing we should look at?
Service.
Service.
You got to provide the service. That's
well,
huge.
Well, they all say they do service.
But do you really do it?
But do I really do it?
That's correct.
So we talk about it, but we don't walk it, right?
You're right, and probably one of the best things to do is everyone out there has existing clients. You know, you might have an existing client at their life insurance policies, or you might be doing some key man work with them or something. And if they've got a company, I mean, just ask the question: do you have a qualified retirement plan? Do you have a 401k? Do you have a plan that exists? And if you do, how often are you meeting with the investment advisor on that plan? And it'll be very interesting and telling what your client actually says to you.
Well, let's flip side this, because
Sure.
I could see us winning on that issue alone.
Absolutely.
However, I'm just going to be the honest guy.
You do.
I could bring this case to you. We'll set it up, and then I don't want to service it. I do everything you just told me not to do, and then I turn out to be the culprit. So how do you help us service, since I want to do, more than likely, I'm a minimum service guy.
Right.
I'm great at presentation. I don't mind coming in once, twice a month, or once, twice a year to do the asset reallocation,
The
things like
enrollment
that.
meetings,
Yes, right.
etc.
I'm cool with that, but going forward, how will you help me? Because I think service is a big key here. I think you could play off the fees, you could play off the asset allocation returns. All those things are big. Why do I want to replace a big group case, which is serious money? But I got to have reason also. Will I be able to do that as a producer? And what if I say to myself, in all honesty, I don't know if I could do it? So how would you help me service if I decide to cross over to your world, Susan?
Okay, well, let's use Mutual of Omaha as an example again. I know we've used it before. What you've got is you have plan sponsor level and advisor level reports that are actually available. So as a plan sponsor, I'm getting information from the carrier or the vendor where my plan is located. Based upon statements, I can pull up asset statements for the plan. I get information on a timely basis as far as changes that might be happening from a law perspective. I get an annual review. Almost all vendors offer some type of an annual review that's coming from the record keeper or the vendor level, which is different than the annual administration reports that my TPA are going to send me. Those are two separate and distinctly different annual reports that are actually being sent to me. One is basically on the asset side and the plan side. The other one is based on the compliance, and it does indicate the asset side, but it'll give me the vesting report and everything else. From a servicing perspective, actually, Mutual of Omaha has what's called your regional pension manager. So they offer that kind of support as well for the plan, web VRU access by not only the participant, but also by the plan sponsor and the investment advisor, as far as knowing how much is in the plan or what's happening in the plan.
As a producer or the investment advisor, however that turns out to be, and I don't want to use the word saddled with service, because then it sounds like you don't even want to service your client. But I'm trying to figure out what partner, like you're using in our example of our platform, Mutual of Omaha, what partner really brings to the table not only the technical intel that you just described, whether it's off the web, it's autopiloted in email, embedded in email announcements or whatever, but I have access to, here's my plan. I know I have to do certain things for this plan at the end of the year and so forth. Who's going to help me, whether it's Mutual of Omaha or wherever else, who's going to help me do that? And this is a big thing we do. See, this is why I'm trying to get producers. We're going to take a lot of the heat off you, some of the heavy lifting of the admin issues, which most of us don't want to do.
Right.
We want to help the client out, but I don't want to do the bureaucracy. And this is one of the big areas where not only, we can do TPA, we can do a lot of these side venue issues, but my biggest issue is you helping our producers service once they install, because you're going to help them at the front end, we get that. Sure. But what about the back end?
Well, it's an ongoing relationship, and especially when you're using a third-party administrator who's consulting on the plan, they're working with the plan sponsor, but they're keeping that investment advisor in the loop as well. That's typically the way it'll happen, because if everyone's in the loop and the client's being serviced to the highest level possible, then that totally eliminates one of the reasons why that plan sponsor might go looking for another vendor, another advisor, or even another TPA from a replacement perspective.
Well, I do want to look at reviewing. We all run into people in social events and so forth and so on, and I want to review people's retirement plan, but I always think of it, Steve does, I'm talking about myself now,
sure,
individual retirement plans. That's how I do it, just one-on-one. But I want to really expand our venue, in this segment. We're marketeers. We're looking at the servicing issues as we're talking about now. We're honing in on that, and you're going to help us with that. We're looking at, how did the funds do during this terrible time? Were they proactive? Did they throw you on the sidelines into cash? Were they quick? Did they try to drag it out? Did they tell you buy and hold, which everybody now hates? Okay, so I'm just saying, and all those issues of who's going to hold my hand through the tough times? Because again, we said the good times, that's pretty obvious.
Exactly. Well, in the good times, nobody cares, because you're making money. It's in the bad times when you're like, hey, wait a minute, I don't understand what's happening. Who's going to help explain this to me, or who's going to work with me to make it through this?
So let's say our producer could get the annual statement for the fund. That would be very helpful.
Absolutely.
The census.
Absolutely.
Of all the players, everybody that's participating.
Yep.
And then if I had the returns, of course, it'd be nice to know where these specific allocations are, and I'd love to see the docs, the actual doc of the plan, because that would tell me what they can do, what they can't do, things of that nature. Once they adopted a plan, and I came with a better plan, can they set the plan aside and do a whole new plan, a whole new platform?
Well, typically what would happen is, and now we're getting into not just the vendor, but we're getting into plan-specific situations, talking about an existing plan, which means a document actually exists. What they might have is they might have a plain 401k plan that they've been using for years, but the diversity of the census has changed, the diversity of the employees, meaning there might be a lot of age differentiation between the owner and the non-owner. So an analysis of the type of plan that is in place right now versus the types of plans that are available now and being used now would actually be run to determine whether or not the current plan design meets the needs of the client. Now that would typically be done by a TPA. An investment advisor would be looking at the investments, whereas a third-party administrator would be looking at the plan design. TPA consultant, pension consultant, because they would say, you know what, it's like anything. You set up that plan 10 years ago. Is it still working for you the way you wanted it to work from 10 years ago? Because things have changed.
That brings up, I think, a huge point here. I don't know if my client knows what his needs are, his or her needs, because it's like the client says, well, I'm not doing this before, so what are the expectations?
Exactly.
And he says, what do I get with this? What should I get with this? And people that already have a plan, I'm sure they thought in their mind when they originally installed the plan, I had these expectations, I thought this is what I would get, and then I see the difference between what I was told and then the actual execution of that.
Correct.
So I'm looking at two issues. One, new clients that don't have a plan and they want to introduce it. They don't have any expectations. They don't know what their needs are.
They don't know what to expect. So you need to tell them and educate them, this is what you're going to get.
All right, but now you're going to have to do that for our producers now. This is why I'm coming to you, Susan. Okay, we don't know what is a need. I mean, that's how most of us that are not in the group pension area, we don't know how to recognize it. So do you have a kind of thing that you look at? Do you have maybe a cheat sheet or a crib sheet? And if you don't, on camera, you'll create one for us, right?
Absolutely, we're going to create one for you.
Well, then you can still call. Just give her 4 days.
Yeah, just give me a couple days.
Give her 12 days.
No, actually, we do have something that we use. Obviously, it's almost proprietary to us from the standpoint of these are trigger things that we just know because we've worked with plants for so long. However, to put that down to just say, hey, these are the 4 things you want to look at, which could trigger the need to change. Has demographics changed quite a bit? Has there been a large change in workforce? I.e., in 2008, we had a lot of plans that lost. All of a sudden, half of their workforce was gone because they had to lay people off. That could change anything. from a testing perspective, from a cover. I mean, there's all kinds of different tests.
Actually, you're bringing up a huge, in my view, errors and omissions issue here, and maybe even issues of plan default because you didn't really keep to the plan. I'm looking at the loss of jobs, which that recharacterizes the census, which recharacterizes whether I'm discriminating or not, or heavyweight plans at the top. And I don't know of anybody that's actually looking at this after the fallout of all the unemployment over the last 24 to 36 months. That is another, I'd like to add that to another marketing issue, because that would be something, I know this company, I know they laid off a lot of people, they had a plan. That'd be a huge due diligence issue there, because the odds are they may be out of compliance.
Right, and another issue too is what would be referred to as, let's say, a business owner. Sometimes they own more than one business. And one of the big compliance issues is basic ownership. What they don't understand is, let's say I have 3 or 4 companies. Well, by attribution alone, I might have to cover employees from some of those other companies because, in a sense, I own certain percentages of all of these other entities.
Okay, well, I think I'm hearing you say something here that is now I'm starting to get uptight.
Don't get uptight.
Okay, sounds like if you have other companies, the IRS may look at you as a total employer.
Right.
Wow, we'll have to save
those
that
are issues for later.
Or it could be a reason why I want to talk to my client and talk to Susan. Susan, I thank you so much for being on our show.
Thank you, Steve.
Again, remember her extension 149 at 1-800-290-7226, or her email susan.hajek@brokersalliance.com. Of course, you can always write me, thebiz@brokersalliance.com, or check me out on our website, www.brokersalliance.com. I'm Steve Savant, and you're listening to the Business Insurance Zone. Well, that's the buzz on the biz for today. Get into the zone, the Business Insurance Zone.
This has been a Bravo video event of the National Insurance Clearinghouse and Brokers Alliance, one of the largest distributors of insurance products and services to a nationwide network of insurance professionals. You can contact Brokers Alliance at brokersalliance.com or 1-800-290-7226, extension 147.